We can go live now to Daniel McAdams. He's the Executive Director at the Ron Paul Institute and joins us now. Hello to you, Daniel. Firstly, let's just talk about the statement that was made by the Defence Ministry just a couple of hours ago. Very strong accusations that America is colluding with ISIL. What sort of reaction would you expect from America on this statement?
Well, I think what the U.S. has done, certainly in Al-Tanf, has benefited ISIL. I don't know about collusion. You could say indirect collusion, but certainly when you have Syrian government allied forces approaching a firefight with ISIL, with ISIS, and the U.S. attacks the people that are fighting ISIS, you have no other conclusion but the fact that the U.S. actions are benefiting ISIS. I don't know if that is the intent. I suspect it is not the intent, but that certainly is the effect of U.S. action in the region.
I mean, and in terms of everybody supposedly is meant to be fighting ISIL at the moment, but clearly there's a breakdown in cooperation, isn't there?
There's not a breakdown in cooperation. It's a simple fact that the United States has set up a base in another country's territory without their permission to do so. And when that other country is attempting to expel a terrorist force from their own soil, the U.S. claims that in self-defense, it is attacking the country on which they're illegally perched. So it's not a lack of communication. It's a problem of criminality on the part of the U.S. government.
And this only serves to escalate the situation, doesn't it? Because we've seen this area of Syria has been a flashpoint over the last few days, and the situation isn't getting any better.
Well, I think we're seeing potentially some dramatic developments today where it appears that some elements of the Syrian army have hooked up with the Iraqi army north and east of Al-Tanf. If that is the case, I think that explains why the U.S. is so desperate to keep the Syrian army out of that area. It does not want the Syrian army to connect with the Iraqi army to fight ISIS together. And the real reason, the real elephant in the room is Iran. And that's why General Mattis yesterday claimed that the U.S. was bombing Iran-directed forces. That's a bit of propaganda for the American public who have been told that Iran is the enemy. So the U.S. is not helping ISIS in the area. They're bombing Iranian forces, and this is what they're trying to prepare the Americans for. The question is, do they really want to have a war with Iran around this base in Al-Tanf, which is not necessary? How far are they going to push it? How far are the Russians and the Syrians going to let them push it? That's a big question, but we are on dangerous territory here.
That's right. I mean, a wider conflict, a much wider conflict, is a prospect, isn't it, at the moment, given the problems we've seen over the last few days and the comments that people have made following it?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
I said the prospect of a wider conflict is very real at the moment.
No, absolutely, that is the case. And the reason why the conflict, a wider conflict is possible is, again, because of the U.S. presence there, which is illegal. The U.S. has set up something called a deconfliction zone. It claims that everyone has agreed on it, but no one else has heard of it except for the U.S. The justification that the U.S. government is trying to use is that the Syrian government forces are not capable of defeating ISIS on their own. Set aside whether or not that's a fact for now, we have to ask ourselves, well, why is that the case? Could it be because the U.S. has been backing an armed insurgency against that same Syrian government since 2011? You've weakened the Syrian government forces, and then you claim, oh, well, you're weakened, you can't fight ISIS, so we've got to go in here and set up an illegal base, and by the way, we're going to attack you and call it defensive in the process. It really is the insanity of, unfortunately, a neocon foreign policy that has infiltrated the Trump administration. It's bad for America, and it's bad for the region.